first respondent is Hyung-Joo Lee. Hyung-Joo is currently a third year PhD G2 student in the concentration of theology and science, and I'm delighted to be his dissertation advisor. Hyung-Joo majored in physics and mathematics during his undergraduate studies in the Korean Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. He went on to obtain a PhD from the same institute in early universe cosmology. Next, he pursued theological studies, obtaining an MDiv from Seoul Theological University, where he also worked as an instructor, teaching theology and science, as well as physics. He is now preparing for his dissertation for his second PhD on how creation and eschatology in Christian theology can be understood with concepts of time and Bible science. I would say Hyung-Joo Lee is one of very, very few scholars in this field with 2 PhDs. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your introduction. First, I'd like to thank Bob, my advisor, whom I truly love and respect, for inviting me to participate in this wonderful workshop. We're also a Family Fellowship Research Conference. As a respondent to Alan Fred, a great scholar and a friend of mine now, Alan. Thank you, Alan, for your wonderful talk. I think you tried to build a new ethical foundation from the interaction between the traditional doctrines in Christian theology and astrobiology. And I think it's a great integration work beyond dialogue. My small suggestion is this. The sense that the direction of interaction in your work is mainly from science to theology. I will ask this question, could we do something more by focusing on the other direction? What will theology say to astrobiology? I suggest Trinity could play a role here because your work is focusing on the intra-relation between different agents. And the concept of Trinity is all about the relationality. I suggest digging not only into the theological anthropology, but also into the doctrines of God for more rich interaction. Let me bring bring a few sentences from the draft I got from you a couple of weeks ago. I think you're saying it is moving biology from being a descriptive science to science based on first principles. I found this sentence sound very fascinating. However, at the same time, I think we should be cautious because biology remains a science as a science, and whether science is descriptive or not is a controversial issue. Moreover, even if having first principles might help, we should not rely on them too much. For example, while many physicists prefer theories with beauty, they abandon their beautiful theories when they find some unexpected unugliness in nature. In this sense, it is quite hard to imagine a science based on first principles. Nevertheless, I agree that astrobiology could give some first principles to the interpretation of biology. Or alternatively, we could redefine astrobiology not as a mere science, but as a metaphysical system with a biology branch and a theology branch. Needless to say, we could have an interaction between science and theology. I'd like to bring 2 sentences from your draft. Here, ignore the page numbers, please. In astrobiology, you're saying one cannot study either living system or habitability. This is both an affair, with which I completely agree. However, you're at the same time saying that phenomena are the ontological inseparability / entanglement of interacting agencies. And I think this sentence has some problem. Because while it is true that there is an ontological inseparability between the observed and the observer in quantum mechanics, I know you're using the language of quantum mechanics when you talk about agential realism, like all that. This inseparability in quantum mechanics should be distinguished from the entanglement, which you seem to mingle here with your sentence. In quantum mechanics, entanglement denotes the mixing of two different quantum states, not of observer and observer. I think your argument fits quite well with the analogy from the quantum entanglement, but not with that from the ontological inseparability from the relation between the observed and the observer. I will explain why with your another sentence in the next slide. So you're saying, even if Homo sapiens did live elsewhere in the cosmos, their interaction with another habitable environment would make them distinct from us here on Earth. I totally agree with this sentence, and I think this plays an important role in your argument. However, it seems not to fit very well with the interaction in Karam-Baraj agential realism, as long as her interaction is from the interaction between the observed and the observer in quantum mechanics. Even if it is true that we have an ontological inseparability between the observed and the observer, the physical observable as a result of collapse by a measurement by an observer does not depend on who the observer is. What makes a change in the observed is a probability just calculated from the amplitude of the wave function that describes things in themselves, borrowing Baraj's terminology. Things in phenomena depend on things behind phenomena, but it does not depend on who things behind phenomena are. On the other hand, according to your claim, the same Homo sapiens should depend on who the environment is. For this reason, the analogy from quantum mechanics on which Baraj relies on do not support your claim significantly. But I don't want to disappoint you. I'm not here to disappoint you. Instead, I suggest that there is a different analogy from the same quantum mechanics language that might support your claim. That is quantum entanglement. And you already mentioned this word but you mingled this one with the ontological inseparability, which I think should be separated from each other. An electron bound to a hydrogen nucleus is described in quantum mechanics in a totally different way than electrons bound to a helium nucleus due to the quantum mechanical entanglement. I think this is an analogy. This analogy could support your argument much better, even though it is also from the same quantum mechanics on which Baraj relies. You might be able to relate my analogy to Baraj's idea, because both of us, Baraj and I, are using the same language of quantum mechanics. I haven't read Baraj, so my idea might. So I have to say that first, but it seems to me that according to your interpretation of her work, my idea might better fit even with her concept of agential realism, if she wants to make both agent, observer, and observed play an active role in her interaction. Okay, I'd like to bring this sentence, you're saying, we are the curious creatures that find our sense of meaningful existence in opening up new possibilities of meaningful existence through the flourishing of the rest of creation. I think there is a theological topic here that might depend on which analogy you use. If you rely on the ontological inseparability, observed and observer analogy, human beings may tend to play a unique role in opening up new possibilities. In this sense, it is quite anthropocentric. On the other hand, if you choose the analogy from the quantum entanglement, both human beings and the creatures entangled to us might open up the possibilities together. Or, alternatively, we could say that it is neither us nor the rest of creation that opens up new possibilities, but that we just choose one possibility among the possibilities already given to us by God. I suggest that it might be more appropriate to say that God opens the future both with the possibilities and with our choice among them. In some sense, we are still opening up new possibilities with our choice, but also with other creatures, and depending on God, who is the source for all possibilities, according to this argument with my analogy. And you're saying, as an interaction, living into this vision of the Imago Dei is never something we can do alone, which I agree with. And you're right. However, we confront a dilemma here. One might argue that the new analogy I suggest has no way for us to invite the rest of creatures to cooperate with us. Even though it is clear from my analogy that we co-work with other creatures to produce a novelty in our reality, it might be difficult to imagine how we could initiate the interaction. Nevertheless, I propose that I could overcome that challenge by assuming that God initiated the process to put Adam, not you, but our ancestor, onto the earth. An electron cannot be bound to a nucleon for itself. But after being put onto the nucleon, it could begin its interaction with the nucleon. With this interaction being initiated by God, next issue is how the agents put together become active agents. I suggest this is the place where astrobiology could play a crucial role, since it critically depends on which condition could lead to an active interaction, which, according to your claim, should be an essential topic in astrobiology. And then, as you suggest, the Imago Dei, in the wider account of cosmogony, could be considered an active, refractive, not reflective, borrowing your term, agent for the process of creation, continuous creation. I think this might give a new interpretation of the traditional doctrines of creation as well. As I suggested at the outset, I believe we have a lot to say with the doctrines of God, not only with the theological anthropology. Thanks for your wonderful comment.
Okay.
That's why I started.
Well, I'll say this was always my favorite part of the conference too, because it was the time where you got to watch somebody really sweat as they try and figure out what they would say on the fly to someone else. First off, I'm looking forward to actually reading the response in some more detail, because there's a richness to it that I'm appreciative of how you've extended arguments that were there in directions that I was not going, right? And I think what I would say is there are three pieces of your response that really stand out to me, and I'll have to think a little bit about them. But one is that you talked about whether science is descriptive, is controversial, and it's hard to imagine if we should really rely as heavily on this first principles definition as I'm suggesting, that the direction of the movement and the argument that I'm making is largely from science to theology, and I would wholeheartedly say yes, right? That is really what I'm doing in this case. And it's in large part because of the function, for me, of using astrobiology as the context of engagement. I think what would be interesting, and I would maybe do this a little differently than what you had suggested and framed, is I would be really curious to see what happens when that astro is a prefix to other disciplines, which is something that I think is happening in the wider sort of set of discourses. You can now find folks writing in astrosociology. You can find folks writing in astrochemistry, astrophysics, which just happened for a while, right? You can find some folks writing in astrotheology. I'm not sure if it is, but right. So I think this is part of what I would wonder, right? Is the tension that happens here really one that should be set up in terms of trying to think how we work back from theology to astrobiology, or is there a fruitful territory opened up by this reframing that happened when Astro was prefixed to various fields. Those would be two different sorts of dialogue there. I don't think they're necessarily at odds with one another. And then your very rich description of entanglement versus inseparability. I am going to refrain from saying anything that I will not be able to do nearly as well as you did just now. What I will say is that I'm pretty sure actually that the sentence that you picked up is not from me, it's actually from Karen Barab. And so I think it's really, I'll have to go back and look at it a little bit more to see if this is sort of a quick reference in her work, if it's an intentional piece of how she wants to put forward an interpretation, which would be a little more dicey in my mind, or if there's a sort of hidden reference here in terms of if she's switching between a sort of philosophical and a quantum mechanical language for entanglement. Any of those are possibilities in my mind, and so I'm curious to sort of dig back into it. But it's a very good point, and I will deeply consider sort of what it would look like to frame this in a more straightforward quantum mechanic entanglement work.